She said it so casually that I almost laughed. Just once. That's what she said, like she was asking me to try a new coffee flavor or take a different route home. We were sitting on the floor of her apartment, backs against the couch, rain tapping the window like it was listening. She was cleaning her closet, throwing dresses onto the bed, complaining about how nothing felt right anymore. I was scrolling on my phone, half listening, fully comfortable in the boring safety of being me. Then she held up a soft blue dress, looked at me with that teasing smile, and said, "Just once. Try it. What's the worst that could happen?" I remember my first reaction wasn't fear. It was laughter mixed with heat rushing to my face. Me. In a dress. I cracked a joke, something stupid, something masculine enough to protect me. But she didn't laugh it off. She tilted her head, studied me like she already knew something I didn't, and said, "You'd look good. And it's just us. No one else will ever know." That sentence slid under my skin. No one else will ever know. It sounded safe. It sounded like a secret with a lock on it. I told myself I was secure enough to joke about it, strong enough to not be affected. I told myself it would be funny, something we'd laugh about later. I didn't tell myself the truth, which was that something in my chest had already started leaning forward. When I stood up, my legs felt strange, like they were carrying me toward something I wasn't supposed to want. She handed me the dress with exaggerated care, like it was fragile, like I was. I disappeared into the bedroom, closed the door, and stared at my reflection. Same face. Same shoulders. Same life. I told the mirror, out loud, "Relax, it's just fabric. Just once." The dress slid over my head easier than I expected. That shocked me more than anything. No resistance. No alarm. Just softness settling where it wanted to be. I didn't recognize myself at first, and that scared me, but then something else followed the fear. Relief. Quiet, deep, and unsettling relief. I stood there too long, breathing differently, standing differently, like my body had been waiting for new instructions. When I walked back out, she covered her mouth, eyes wide, not mocking, not laughing. "Wow," she said, and there was something real in it. Not a joke. Not a dare. Real. She fixed the strap on my shoulder without asking. Fingers light, respectful. "See? I told you. Just once." We laughed after that, but it was nervous laughter, like we had crossed an invisible line and were pretending we hadn't noticed. She took pictures, then deleted them in front of me to prove she was serious about the secret. I changed back quickly, like staying too long would expose me. We ordered food. We watched a movie. Life went back to normal. Or at least that's what it looked like. But that night, lying next to her, I couldn't sleep. The feeling of the fabric lingered on my skin like a memory that refused to fade. My thoughts kept replaying the moment I saw myself, not as a joke, not as a costume, but as someone quieter and somehow more honest. I told myself it was curiosity. I told myself it was her influence. I told myself it was nothing. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye and said, "Thanks for trusting me." That word stayed with me all day. Trusting. Like I had handed her something valuable without realizing it. At work, I stared at my screen and felt like I was acting. Like everyone else had the script and I was improvising badly. I kept thinking about how natural it felt, and that terrified me more than if it had felt wrong. I promised myself it would never happen again. Just once means just once. That's how rules work. But rules only work when they're protecting you from something you don't secretly want to walk toward. And I didn't know it yet, but that single moment had already started rearranging me from the inside, quietly, patiently, waiting for the next excuse. I didn't plan it. That's the lie I tell myself when I replay how it happened the second time. The truth is quieter and harder to admit. A week passed. We didn't talk about the dress. She didn't tease me, didn't hint, didn't bring it up like a shared joke. That silence made it heavier. It sat between us every time we met, invisible but present, like a word we were both avoiding because saying it might make it real. One evening, she asked me to come over after work. Her tone was normal, casual, but my chest tightened for no clear reason. When I arrived, she was cooking, music playing low, the apartment warm and familiar. Everything looked the same, and that somehow made me more nervous. Halfway through dinner, she said, without looking at me, I was thinking about that night. My fork stopped mid-air. She kept talking, voice steady. I just want you to know. I didn't think less of you. I actually felt closer. Closer. That word hit harder than the first time. I tried to respond logically, to laugh it off, but my voice came out thinner than usual. She finally looked at me then, really looked, and said, "If it confused you, we never have to talk about it again." The kindness in that offer scared me more than pressure would have. After dinner, while she washed dishes, she said softly, "There's something I want to show you." She went to the bedroom and came back holding a folded piece of clothing. Not a dress this time. Something simpler. Something that felt less like a joke and more like a choice. She placed it on the couch between us like an invitation she wasn't sure I'd accept. "You don't have to," she said quickly. "I mean it. This isn't a test." That's when I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. I wanted to. Not to please her. Not to prove anything. I wanted to because something inside me had been restless all week, replaying that quiet relief, that unfamiliar sense of alignment. My hands moved before my mouth could object. I nodded once. That was all. This time, there was no laughter. No nervous jokes. I didn't rush to change. I took my time, breathing slowly, like I was stepping into cold water on purpose. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't flinch. I adjusted myself naturally, instinctively, like my body knew what it was doing even if my mind was still catching up. When I came out, she didn't say wow. She smiled softly and said, "There you are. Not you look good. Not this is funny. There you are." My throat tightened. She sat beside me, close but not touching, giving me space to exist without commentary. We talked about normal things at first, about work, about movies, about nothing important, and that normalcy made it feel dangerously real. Later, she asked, "How does it feel?" I searched for a safe answer. Comfortable felt too revealing. Wrong felt like a lie. I settled on honest. "Like I'm quieter inside," I said. "Like the noise turned down." She nodded, like she understood exactly what I meant. That night, when I changed back, I felt the loss immediately. Like stepping out of warmth into air that was suddenly too sharp. I didn't mention it. I didn't need to. She hugged me a little longer than usual before I left. On the drive home, my reflection in the windshield felt unfamiliar again, like I was returning to a role I'd played well for years. I told myself this was still under control. It was still occasional. Still contained. Just once had become twice, but twice didn't mean anything, right? People try things. People explore. It didn't mean it was part of me. But the days that followed were harder. My clothes felt louder. My movements felt rougher. I caught myself imagining softer versions of myself in quiet moments, then scolding myself for it. I avoided mirrors. I avoided her eyes when she studied me like she was checking in, not pushing. The secret grew heavier, not because it was shameful, but because it felt true. And truth demands attention. I started to realize that the real danger wasn't her suggestion or her closet or that first night. The real danger was how natural it all felt, and how much effort it now took to pretend that part of me didn't exist. I still told myself I could stop any time. I still believed that lie. But the wanting had already learned my name, and it wasn't asking permission anymore. It wasn't long before just once became something I thought about constantly, even when I tried not to. At first, I told myself it was curiosity, an experiment. But experiments have an end, and this didn't. It kept stretching forward, quiet, insistent, like a shadow that doesn't leave. I caught myself lingering by the store windows, watching mannequins dressed in soft fabrics, imagining how I'd look if I tried them on. I started noticing textures, colors, how a sleeve draped across an arm, how a skirt swayed with movement. I hated how fascinated I was, hated how excited it made me. The breaking point came unexpectedly. One Saturday, she invited me over under the pretense of binge-watching old movies. But when I walked in, she was kneeling on the floor, surrounded by piles of clothes, scissors, ribbons, makeup, an entire transformation station that I hadn't anticipated. I froze at the door. I can't, I whispered, feeling panic prick at my chest. She didn't look at me the way I expected. There was no judgment, no teasing. She just smiled softly, almost sadly. You don't have to. Only if you want to. Her words unlocked something I hadn't admitted yet. I wanted to. Not for her, not for fun, not for a dare. I wanted to because it had become part of me in a way I couldn't deny anymore. I stepped closer, each foot heavy with hesitation and thrill, and she handed me a piece of clothing. It wasn't fancy, just a simple, soft blouse and a skirt, but it felt like a key. When I changed, I took my time. I studied every detail in the mirror. The reflection was still me, but it wasn't exactly me anymore. My features softened in ways I couldn't describe. My posture shifted without effort. I could feel the difference in my movements, subtle but profound. When I walked out, she didn't say anything. She just held out her hand, and for the first time, I took it without thinking about who I was supposed to be. That night, we sat side by side on the couch, watching the movie, the room quiet except for the dialogue on the screen. I kept stealing glances at her, and she caught me every time, her eyes calm, steady, full of something that made my chest ache. For the first time, I admitted it to myself, I liked this. Not just the clothes, not just the look, but how it made me feel inside. It was scary, thrilling, terrifyingly peaceful all at once. The next few weeks were a blur of secrecy and small indulgences. I learned to move differently, to sit differently, to let my body respond to softness rather than hardness. I started experimenting with small details. How I parted my hair, how I held my hands, how I spoke. Each time, it felt natural, like I was uncovering pieces of myself that had been hidden behind habits and expectations. I remember one night vividly. I had dressed carefully, trying a skirt that flowed better than anything I'd owned before. She came home from work, looked at me, and said nothing at first. Just stood there, studying me. Then she whispered, "You look right." And in that word, right, I felt more understood than I ever had. More myself than I had allowed to exist in the daylight. But with understanding came fear. The fear of discovery, the fear of judgment, the fear of being trapped in something I couldn't explain. I had to hide it from everyone else, my friends, my family, even co-workers. Each day was a balancing act between the person I had always been expected to be and the person I was becoming in private. The tension was exhausting, thrilling, addictive. And secretly, I was starting to crave it more than I wanted to admit. I had begun keeping a journal, something I never thought I'd do. I wrote about the textures, the feelings, the quiet joy of seeing myself in the mirror without judgment. I wrote about the thrill of the secret, the risk, the intimate confession I carried only for her. Reading it back, I realized how much I had changed in just a few weeks. This wasn't a costume anymore. It wasn't a phase. It was me, growing, evolving, and reshaping my understanding of who I could be. And that's when it hit me, the moment I couldn't ignore, the truth I'd been running from. This wasn't just once anymore. Just once had opened the door, but now I was living on the other side, and there was no turning back. My life had quietly shifted while I was distracted by curiosity and excitement. I was someone else now, someone more honest with herself, and that realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. Every reflection, every soft fabric, every secret glance in the mirror reminded me. The person I was hiding from the world was not who I wanted to be anymore. And somewhere deep down, I knew that if I tried to go back, the old me would feel like a stranger. The realization settled in slowly, like sunlight spilling into a room I had kept shuttered for years. I couldn't go back. Not really. Every just once I had told myself was already gone. I was no longer experimenting. I was living it, and for the first time, I felt what it truly meant to be free in my own skin, even if it was only in private, even if it was only with her. That weekend, she suggested something that made my heart stop. Why don't we go out? Just somewhere quiet. Just us. My first instinct was panic. The streets, the lights, the potential for anyone to see. My chest tightened, my hands grew clammy. But then I looked at her, calm, smiling, like she was telling me I had permission to exist fully, and something inside me clicked. I could do this. I wanted to. We left in the late afternoon, the city glowing under the soft light of a winter sun. I wore a carefully chosen outfit, a flowing skirt, a blouse that felt like it had been made for me, a jacket to hide and reveal at the same time. I moved differently, walked differently. Every step was a revelation. The fear was there, sharp and alive, but it was tempered by a thrill I hadn't felt before. It was the thrill of stepping into authenticity, no matter how tentative. At the cafe we chose, the world felt enormous. I could feel eyes, subtle but unavoidable, and my chest beat faster with each glance. Yet she held my hand, steady, unflinching, like an anchor I didn't know I needed. People passed, some staring, some oblivious, and I realized something extraordinary. The world didn't matter. What mattered was me. What mattered was her. What mattered was finally feeling whole, even in a form I had once thought forbidden. Back at her apartment that night, I sat quietly on the couch, absorbing everything I had experienced. The fear, the adrenaline, the quiet liberation, it all mingled in a way that left me trembling. She came over, wrapped her arms around me, and whispered, "See? You're still you. You're just more." That phrase stayed with me long after the hug ended. More. I was more. Not less, not broken, not a joke. More. It wasn't just about clothes or appearance. It was about self-discovery, courage, acceptance, and love. Love for someone who saw me fully, love for a part of myself I had been hiding, love for the quiet thrill of truth. The weeks that followed blurred the line between private and public, between secret and identity. I began exploring more confidently. Softer hairstyles, colors I had avoided, fabrics that made my skin sing. Each day brought a new nuance of self I hadn't dared explore. I discovered gestures, expressions, and small ways of being that felt natural. I wasn't performing anymore. I was becoming. Yet even as I embraced it, the story of fear lingered. There were nights when I doubted myself, nights when my reflection felt like a stranger, nights when I worried about discovery. But those nights became shorter, quieter. The weight of secrecy turned into a rhythm, a reminder that courage isn't absence of fear, but persistence in spite of it. One evening, as we sat together, I realized I hadn't thought about hiding in days. I caught my reflection in the window, soft, confident, alive, and smiled. Not out of vanity, but out of recognition. Finally, I was living the version of myself that had always been waiting quietly beneath the surface. She squeezed my hand, noticing the smile, and said, "You're happy, aren't you?" I nodded. Words weren't enough. Happiness wasn't a single feeling, it was a constellation of relief, thrill, courage, and intimacy. It was quiet moments of reflection, moments of discovery, moments of fear faced and survived. It was being fully seen and fully alive in the skin I had always been destined to inhabit, even if it took a casual suggestion, a soft dress, and the courage to say yes to something terrifying, beautiful, and undeniably true. And in that moment, I knew that just once had been a door I had no intention of closing. I wasn't the same person I had been before. I was more. I was myself. And the world, terrifying, unpredictable, and imperfect, was finally just big enough for me to exist in it fully, quietly, courageously, without apology. From that day on, nothing was ever just once again. Every step, every choice, every glance in the mirror became a declaration. I had discovered something too real, too necessary, too human to ever hide. And I would never stop exploring it, never stop honoring it, never stop becoming the version of me that had been waiting patiently all along. The journey wasn't easy. It wasn't always joyful. But it was mine. And for the first time, I felt like I could breathe fully, finally, without fear, because I had said yes to curiosity, to courage, to transformation, and above all, to myself.